Well, good evening. How's everybody feeling? Anybody jet lagged? You guys caffeinated? I told a colleague I was really excited to be here because finally I don't get any judgment when I drink a Red Bull because it's from the region, so I feel in my element. Well, thank you firstly to Deputy Chief of Mission Hall for the kind introduction. Thank you to some of our ASEAN colleagues who are here with us this evening. Thank you to our colleagues Fiona and Sarah at Making Sense International. I've known Fiona and Sarah back in Washington, D.C., and as you have already found out from hearing them and seeing their energy and their experience, we couldn't ask for two better leaders and the rest of their team to spearhead and quarterback this YSEALI workshop. I also wanted to give a thanks to Nick Snyder and Tessa and the team in the public affairs section of the embassy here in Singapore. But most importantly, I wanted to thank you all, the folks in this room, the 60 young Southeast Asia leaders who are taking time out of your work schedules, out of your educational duties, to be here with us from your respective communities and countries to engage over the next 5 days. And we're pretty confident that while it'll be a pretty intensive and challenging times that'll force some introspection and some vulnerability, it'll also hopefully be an incredibly impactful few days with opportunities to share ideas, to connect with one another, to learn from established mentors, entrepreneurs, and business leaders, and to ideally come up with some action-oriented policies for unleashing the power of human capital. As Deputy Chief of Mission Hall mentioned, my name is Andy Rabens, and I'm a Special Advisor for Global Youth Issues at the U.S. Department of State. I work in the Office of the Undersecretary for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs, and my role is one that's focused on helping the U.S. government build relationships and connections with young people overseas, both to help solve some of the pressing challenges of today, but also to build networks and connectivity to face the world of tomorrow, the world of the future. And the YSEALI network that's being built here in Southeast Asia is one of the shining examples of the type of network that can be a positive, transformative force to face that world of the future. So thank you all for being a part of it. Now, this is my first time to Southeast Asia, and I'm truly humbled to have the opportunity to speak with you all tonight. And I'm truly excited to be with you all for two main reasons. One is the content of this workshop. And secondly, is the folks who are in this room. And I want to talk about both of those in a little more depth. Firstly, the content of this workshop, unlocking the power of human capital. Now, there is no more critical issue facing young people at this moment than how to unlock the potential of young people through meaningful and fulfilling work. As many of you are well aware, 65% of the ASEAN region is below the age of 35. And youth unemployment and youth economic opportunity is a critical issue here and a critical issue around the globe. It's a critical issue back in the United States. It's an issue that's linked to so many other competing issues, connected issues, dignity, economic opportunity, stability, youth empowerment, optimism about the future, and so much more. So there couldn't be a more pressing and pertinent issue for you all to tackle. There's much to be done in this space. We need to convince governments to see young people through a lens of economic opportunity, through a lens of engines of economic growth, as opposed to lenses of fear and instability, which is far too often the case. We need to find ways of providing productive pathways for young people to align their passions with work opportunities. We need to figure out how to unlock the potential and the power within each of us. And we need to find ways to help each other dream big, break down barriers, defy the odds, and develop and make the most of our talents. Now, to share a personal example, I want to tell you that I really shouldn't be speaking at this podium today. I grew up as the middle of 3 boys in Berkeley, California, and I had a pretty good childhood. I was a little kid with an enormous head full of bright red hair and a lot of energy as a child. But I had an incredible speech impediment. I had what's called a lisp and wasn't able to say R's, SH's, S's, and the worst letter combo for me growing up was DR. And unfortunately, my parents, who I love to death, happened to name me Andrew, with a big DR right up front. So it created all sorts of problems as a kid growing up. And as you went around, you know, when you introduce yourself, as I think was done earlier today, in those circles, over and over again, I felt that sense of humiliation and sense of lack of worth, because I couldn't pronounce Andrew. It came out Andu. Eventually in 3rd grade, I decided I had enough of this. I'm going to officially change my name from Andrew to Andy, which I could say. And it's stuck ever since. My parents, over time, found a speech therapist that I worked with for years growing up, trying to understand how to say letter combinations. And over time was able to overcome that speech impediment to a good degree and finally feel as if I was making progress in unlocking my personal voice. So one of the passions for me and one of the drivers for me has been not only trying to unlock my own voice, but helping and empowering others to unlock and find their own voice. And it's something that is a lot more common than people realize. Anybody in this room feel uncertain or uneasy about public speaking? Anyone? Don't be shy, don't be shy. So we're not alone. It turns out that public speaking is the #1 fear of people around the world. The #1 fear. Number 2 fear, death. So there's an American comedian named Jerry Seinfeld. I don't know if you all know Jerry Seinfeld, Seinfeld Show. Pretty good. And he does a great routine where he talks about, it's a little bit dark, I gotta warn you, but if we were all at a funeral right now, and there was a casket up on stage, that the majority of us would prefer to be in the casket than giving the eulogy at the podium. So the idea, public speaking is just one of those skill sets and tools that's going to be addressed at this workshop, and one of the examples of a skill set that we all have to take ownership of if we're going to develop and move down these productive pathways. Another key issue is understanding our passions, understanding what lights us up, and then trying to align our passions with meaningful work opportunities. Now, my dad in California is a doctor. He's a pediatrician, a doctor for kids out in Oakland, California. And I know that growing up, there was nothing that he would have loved more than for either myself or my 2 brothers to have gone into medicine. Even after we had horrible grades in science in middle school and high school, he still was pushing the idea of potentially unlocking our potential and going into medicine. When I was in college, I got bit by the political and international relations bug. My younger brother got bit by the music bug. My older brother got bit by the entrepreneurship bug. And none of us ended up going into medicine. When I graduated college in 2005, I knew I wanted to enter into the world of politics and see what that was all about. And unfortunately at that time, there were very few jobs that paid money in politics, that paid a living wage. So after college for me, I moved from from Boston to Washington. I was committed to working in Capitol Hill for a member of Congress or in some political space so I could understand whether this was something that I wanted to do for a career. I couldn't find a job. I was crashing, sleeping on friends' couches. I was dropping off resumes to anyone who would accept it. I was talking to anybody who would hear me out on my qualifications, but no luck, no such luck. I remember it was a time of incredible frustration. I just spent all this money and time on a great education, but I couldn't seem to make a fit to connect my passion with opportunities that were available. I eventually took an unpaid internship with a member of Congress. I got a small apartment, a shared room with a good friend. I took a job as a telemarketer, someone who sold tickets at a place called the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., where I sold 5 nights a week and a day and a half on the weekends. I sold ballet tickets in musical theater acts that were coming to Washington, D.C. Over time, I got very versed in the Bolshoi Ballet, in visiting musical acts in Broadway shows, and eventually became decent enough at sales to be able to earn a living while trying to make politics work. And eventually, after a few months, was able to get a low-paying job in a senator from California in her office. And eventually, that was a spark for me that propelled me and excited me about a career, a future career in government and international relations. So we have to think about and be honest about what actually lights us up, what gets us going, what do we want to wake up to in the morning, what's our actual passions. And it's likely going to be different for different people, but we have to work on creating those opportunities for ourselves and each other and figuring out what those skill sets are that we need to be able to propel ourselves down these economic and job-related paths. Now, secondly, and more importantly, I'm excited by the people in this room. If everybody just takes 1 second and just look around. Look around for a moment. We've got 60 young leaders from ASEAN representing the present and the future of the region. I've had a chance to look at the bios, the biographies I hope some of you have, and it's an incredibly impressive group. We've got teachers. We've got government officials. We've got students. We've got entrepreneurs. We've got social media practitioners. We've got organizers. We've got activists. We've got elected officials. I see Powell over there. You name it, they're in this room. Now, I've been lucky to have had the chance over the past few months to meet some of the YSEALI network members, both in Washington, D.C., at one of the Making Sense conferences, and also just a couple weeks ago in Marrakesh, Morocco, where a number of YSEALI members came to participate in the Global Entrepreneurship Summit. But I'm really excited to learn from all of you. I'm really excited to hear your stories. I'm really excited to understand the challenges that you see, and more importantly, the region that you're planning to shape. So let me close by saying that this is just the beginning. This YSEALI 5-day workshop is just the beginning of an ongoing relationship that the US government is pushing to support young people across the ASEAN region through the YSEALI network. Just a couple weeks ago, President Obama was in Rangoon, where he gave a town hall to 400 YSEALI members. And at that town hall, he talked about the power of this network, of this over 13,000 strong YSEALI network and growing, to really reshape and push forward on some of the pressing challenges in the region. Now, you all have been selected by your respective embassies, consulates, friends, colleagues, as current and future leaders across the region. So we want to support you and make sure that you excel in your respective careers. Ladies and gentlemen, let me close by saying that I know that the human capital in this room alone can do extraordinary things, and that you all will come up with some innovative ideas over the next 5 days to unlock the potential of young people across the region. But let me also urge you all to be willing to get out of your comfort zone, to be willing to get a little bit introspective about what actually drives you, to be willing to get a little bit vulnerable about where your personal weaknesses might lie, or where that misalignment is between your passions and your work trajectory. And let's try to find a way to better align ourselves with where we're looking to go, and also find ways to help others to do the same. So I'm really looking forward to spending some time with you over the next couple of days. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you all will come up with. And thank you again for your time.
Thank you. So thank you again, Andy, for joining us. So many of you do not know, but to come from the United States to Singapore, you lose an entire day getting here. And for Andy, that day that he lost happened to be his birthday.
It's true, it's true.
So if you all would join me really quickly in singing happy birthday to Andy and thanking him for being here. Happy birthday
So embarrassing.
to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Andy. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you. That was probably the most embarrassing thing I've ever done. Thank you. Oh my God.